we should be starting week 8. So I'm going to go, remember we're on week 8, all right, which is on 127. Okay, we're going to review a little bit of week 7 in just a moment. I'm going to go make sure everybody's out. Hey, Jason, you want to come over here, brother, so we can, good morning. Good morning, ladies. How are y'all? Oh, you the man.
Try to be.
Try to be. Good morning.
Good morning.
Come on, guys. Buddy, I think that hair might pop a balloon.
He won't go anywhere.
You want to go with Carter? No? Well, that's all right. If he wants to go with Sissy, he can. He didn't want to go. Well, sometimes I can't blame him for that. I mean, what's up, Means? Is it?
Morning, bro.
Morning, buddy. You all right? Morning, teacher. You going to join us in there? Okay. You hurting today? What, bud? Yes, you do. No prelude. That's fine. Yeah, sounds good. What is it? Go put it in my office. Okay. All right, make sure you're sitting close enough to people that you can talk to them. All right. So if you got your books, turn to page 121. If we have any couples in here that are willing to share a book, we got some visitors with us just so they can follow along. Maybe want to share one? No? Are we selfish people here today? Okay. Yeah, it is. I remember that lady. Man, Matthew tried to call twice. It's just, all right. Okay. I hope everybody's doing good this morning. Again, we're on page. We're going to start actually on page 121, which is the last part of week 7. But if you would, does anybody have any prayer requests this morning before we start? Yes, Katie. Oh yes, how's she doing? Good. Good. Amen. Anybody else? Prayer requests today?
Yeah, my brother and his wife and my niece, they're all just having a lot of pain. It's different types of pain, but they all got pain. Praise God for touching them. Especially my niece, there's some things going on with them. I don't know what's happening.
Okay, so remember your niece. Remember the family Don Haney as he passed away yesterday. Anybody else? Anybody else? Any unspoken prayer requests by lifted hand? Several. Okay. All right, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Eric, will you pray for us, please?
Father, we thank you for another day of life. Father, we just thank you for the many blessings. We just pray, Father, that you would do with those that are sick and afflicted this morning. With those that have lost loved ones, we just pray for the will be done, Father. We pray for the count down, Father, for times as illness and loss. We pray, Father, that you would be with us this morning as we study your discipleship. Father, we just pray that you open our eyes, open our ears, open our hearts. When we are done here, Father, we can go out and seek. Spread your gospel to those that do not know you. Father, bless us, guide us, keep us, forgive us for we sin. All short. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. So, I know this has been a difficult week, so don't feel bad if you haven't done real well with your book this week. It's been kind of a chaotic week with multiple deaths within the church and just busyness, wedding, and all that stuff. So I do hope you, if you get a chance to go back and look at week 7, it's this reproducible process of creating disciples. Once you turn on page 121, just a quick review, okay? Again, I didn't hide yours. Don't you dare blame that on me. All right. Okay. So here's the thing. Week 8, it's about sharing, okay? Because remember, the process of growing disciples, okay, remember it's share, then what's next? Connect, okay? And now when we talk about connect, that means to do what? Right, get them connected spiritually with a family, with a church, okay, with a local congregation, okay? So after we connect them, then we do what? Minister, okay? So we help grow them, we teach them, we take them out, we serve with them, okay? And once we have ministered to them, then we disciple them so that they can in turn do what? The whole process over again. So we're going to talk specifically today about share. Now, what stage of development do we share with in the discipleship process? Infant or spiritually dead, okay? Remember, because it says that how beautiful are the feet of those who share the good news, because they can't believe unless it's been what? Preached, okay? They can't believe unless they've heard the word. And that's an amazing thing that God puts that responsibility on us. All right, so sharing your testimony. Somebody read for me 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 6 and 7. Anybody want to read that out loud? John, you got that? Okay. Should be on the right side of your book. Okay, so it's interesting. I saw a post online last night, and it's this church in Kentucky, and the town that this church is in only has about 560 people, right? And this church has 2,500 members. Okay, the pastor started there in 1980-something as a 22-year-old student right out of college. Okay, and he was a farmer by trade. And he quickly learned, he went to a conference, and they were talking about all of the characteristics of a growing church and what would make a growing church. And he was like, fantastic, we don't have any of these characteristics. He said, so we got to change some things. And so he began to look at how he farmed and how he grew crops and how he handled his cattle and how he did all this stuff. And he said, I know exactly how to make a harvest plentiful with my crops. He says, so I'm going to take that exact same mindset and apply it to our church. And which is very biblical. If you go through the Bible, most of the analogies within that time period were farm-related. And so what he would do is he said, okay, I'm going to burn out and I'm going to fail if I try to do all this by myself. He said, so I've got to get the church on board with the mission. I've got to get everybody owning the outreach. He said, because I know if I want a great harvest, I've got to be very abundant with my sowing. I've got to sow a lot of seed if I want to get a big harvest. He said, same thing goes for church. And he said, so what I did, I got the church involved. I got them to buy in. He said, and I was amazed when we hit 100 people. I was amazed when we hit 200 people. I was amazed when we hit 500 people. I was amazed when we hit 1,000 people. He said, but when they took his picture for the church bulletin, they said, we don't want to take a picture of you preaching. We don't want to take a picture of you behind your desk because that's not where we find you most of the time. We want to take a picture of you knocking on somebody's door because that's what he does. He goes door to door, knocks on people's doors, shares with them the gospel, tells them about church, invites them to come with him, and he's not the only one that does it. The rest of the church does as well. They go out and they search for people. They sow seed. And so when we wonder why our churches don't grow, we wonder why people aren't coming in because we're probably not sowing seed and we're just hoping. You know, I did that with my backyard for a long time. I was like, I don't want to throw any grass seed out there. I'll just, maybe grass will grow. You know, I'll just leave it. You know, let it happen. It's not going to happen like that. It's going to take work. And so this church is just blowing it up, you know, because they are intentionally going after people. They're intentionally sharing the gospel with people, and they're sowing seed. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of people that are like, no, we don't want any part of that. But clearly, when you have 5 times the amount of people in your congregation as you do in your town, you're doing something right. Okay, you're doing something right. And so you have a guy. They don't even have any restaurants. I think they have one stoplight, and their church is almost at a mega size. You know, that's amazing, all right? But it's because they are sowing the seed. But he realizes, just like this verse John read, is that we plant the seed, someone else waters it, but God makes it grow. God is the one that makes it grow. And so we need to keep that in mind when we're looking at this. So this idea of sharing with someone, what hinders you or what scares you about sharing with someone who's lost or talking to somebody who's just a new Christian? What keeps you from doing it? Fear of rejection. Okay. How many is that? That's pretty consistent for you. How many are afraid that they're going to reject it? Why? Human nature. Okay. And I think we have to get, and I'm not going to say I'm not like that, because I am too. You know, I'm very standoffish when it depends. But, you know, the other day I was at the gym before I hurt my back. And I was at the gym, and I was sitting in there, and I was doing the row machine, and there was 3 kids in there. And I say kids because one's a senior in high school, the other 2 had graduated within like the last 3 years. And it was just us. No one else was in the gym, and I knew all these kids. And I was like, I'm not at school. There's no parents around. It's like there ain't nothing stopping me from telling them about church besides me. And I was like, okay, when I finish this exercise, it's game on. And so I went to the one that I knew went to church first. And the other 2 had headphones in. They weren't listening to me. And so I talked to him for just a second, just to kind of break the ice for myself, not for them, like just for myself. And so then once I talked to him, and the other 2 were at opposite ends of the gym, I went, hey, where do y'all go to church? You know, not loud enough for them to be like, what? You know, and they took their headphones off, and I was like, where y'all go to church at? And they each came up to me and was like, well, I go with my dad sometimes to such and such place. And the other one goes, well, my mom's a pastor. And I was like, well, where at? And he goes, I can't remember what it's called. And then the other one comes and goes, actually, it's not at this place, it's at this place. And I said, well, I'm really glad your parents go to church, but that's not what I asked you. You know, and I like made them own up to it. And they were like, well, I should go, you know, more, I should go. And I said, are you telling me that because you really feel like you should go, or because you feel like everyone else feels like you should go? I said, because you walking into a church doesn't make you any more of a Christian than me walking into this gym makes me as big as you. And I said, you know, it's up to you. And so we had a really good conversation, but it took me a minute, even in that easy of a conversation to have, it took me a minute to be bold enough to share that with them. But here's what I will say. I was ready to share with anybody after that. I was ready to go. I was like, let's do this, you know. And that's what happens. God empowers us. The Holy Spirit gives us the words to speak if we're willing to open our mouths. And so we need to remember that. And so if you turn to the next page, 128, okay, it says this: the typical church believer will die without leading a single person to a life-saving relationship with Jesus Christ. Does that bother you? And I think some of us will be like, wow, that's not true. I'd say it probably is. I mean, think about it. You know, if you were to talk to a lot of people who claim to be believers and say, when was the last time you led someone to the Lord? I don't know. You know, never actively. And we need to think about that, because, you know, if you've ever had a missionary, I like how they use quotations here, a missionary come to your door. Okay, we won't talk about any particular missionaries, but if you've ever had someone come to your door, what are some feelings that come for you? So look at that right there. Look at the options there. What are some of those feelings that you have felt when they've come to the door for you? Anybody here felt irritated when they came to the door? A little bit, Lee? Depending on the time, okay? All right. Anybody ever felt cared for when they came to the door? Yeah? Yeah, okay. Because exactly. I mean, there should be part of us that are like, wow, they really care about what they believe. If they'll come to my door and talk to me about it. You know, when's the last time I went to somebody's door and talked to them about the Lord, you know? Then, how many of you have ever been frustrated? Chances are you're only frustrated if you've actually talked to them, okay? How many felt like you've been talked at and not to? Okay? All right. Supported and understood? No. Suspicious? What do you want? Okay. You know, I love the story of Francis Chan. He was talking with some Jehovah's Witnesses came to his door, and Francis Chan is a pastor in California, and he said that they came to his door, and he said, they were like, we want to talk to you. And he was like, great, let's talk. He said, no, seriously. He said, I want to talk to you too. He said, you got some people here that are spiritually minded and they want to talk about spiritual things, and God loves them just like He loves me. Let's talk. And they began to talk to him, and he said, well, let me share with you something. He's like, let me share with you what God has done in my life, about some answered prayers that God has done. And he begins to share with them about these prayers. And the woman said, you can't, see, no, he said, do you believe God answers prayers? And they said, no, that's the thing. God doesn't answer everybody's prayers. And he goes on to share, he's like, you're actually right. Biblically, you're right. God doesn't answer everybody's prayers. And he starts quoting all these scriptures about the caveats for prayer. And he said, you're right. God doesn't answer everybody's prayers, but He answers mine. And they were like, all right, we need to leave. And he said, well, wait. I want to share some more with you. If you don't mind, I'm going to walk with you. And so he follows them for like a block and a half, sharing them about what God has been doing in his life, and they could not get away fast enough, right? And so have you ever just wanted God to just put somebody in your path who wanted to talk about the Lord? And then when they get to the door, you're like, I don't have time for this. Okay? Because either one, we're not prepared, or two, we really don't want to talk about it. I had some Mormon missionaries come to my house the other day, and all the years we've lived in Cross Creek, never have they come to our house. They said that I've been home. They've always just gone by. And I was coming out the door. I was actually coming to church, and here they come up the driveway, and I was like, shoot, I got to leave. And they started asking me questions, and I said, listen, guys, I got to go. I said, but you are more than welcome. Come back anytime. I said, I'll bring you inside. We'll sit down. We'll have a drink. I said, and we'll talk. I said, I'd love to share with you all about the Lord. And now whether they'll come back or not, I don't know. But we have to be willing to share with them when we talk about this. So if you're going to do this, you need to recognize who's spiritually dead. And this, we've talked about some phrases from the stage, some things people might say if they're spiritually dead. But in order to recognize them, look at number 3 at the bottom. Okay, without looking at the answers, you tell me. Okay, circle true, or just tell me if it's true or false. People who are spiritually dead are in the 3rd stage of spiritual growth. False. Okay. People who are spiritually dead often make statements like, I don't believe in God, or there are many ways to God. True. Okay, people who are spiritually dead need a family to connect with on their discipleship journey. False. What journey? What journey? Okay, they're not on one right now, all right? Now, people who are spiritually dead are sometimes characterized by rebellion. Absolutely. Absolutely true. Okay? People who are spiritually dead need a place to begin to minister to others. False. You can't minister to somebody if you don't know the Lord. Okay? And people who are spiritually dead can make disciples. False. Okay? Make sure you understand. All right. So I want you to, on the page 129, I want you to turn to the people beside you. Okay? And this is just your opinion. All right? But answering questions. All right, I want you to think, what are the top 3 questions you think unbelievers struggle to understand? Okay? What are the top 3 questions that unbelievers struggle to understand? So discuss that amongst yourselves. What are some questions you think unbelievers have that they just don't understand? All right? Talk about that amongst yourself. Hey, Leah, don't let Calvin sit out there by himself. Leah, make Calvin work. Make him do his homework. Park it, mister. Okay, what do you think are the top 3 questions that unbelievers struggle to understand? Hey, Jason, come down here and talk with Katie. She won't let you play with her My Little Pony, but she'll talk to you. Yeah, she might. Oh, thank you. All right, what are the top 3 questions unbelievers struggle to understand? Now, if you can narrow it down to about a question apiece, then talk amongst yourself. How would you answer that question for them? How would you answer that question? We're on page 129, guys. It just came in, Sammy. How would you answer each of those questions? What do you think the top 3 questions unbelievers struggle to understand? If you can narrow it down to a question apiece, then how would you all answer them? Like, how would you answer them for? So if I was that unbeliever and I asked you that question, how would you answer it for? Okay. So how would you answer that question, Jason? If someone's like, I can't see God. How do I know He's there? Right. Right. Because
That's how I always answer it. It's like with the wind and like other stuff that indicate a certain sea that you like see what it does. It's the same concept.
yeah, it's important that when you're talking to people about stuff like this, that you point out the bias that they have in this, because they will take that same mindset. Well, I can't see it, so I don't believe it. But they'll say, well, I can't see this, but I believe it because someone told me, because someone showed me. And so you have to. There's a bias there. It's not because they can't see it. It's because they don't want to. Like, they don't want to believe it. And so you have to be able to point that out. And that's a good point to say, well, you believe this and you don't see it. And they'll say, well, someone told me, or science proves it. Well, have you seen it? Were you the one that broke it down and saw the oxygen molecules? So that's a good point. What's another one of y'all's questions?
Like the first one, David said was like the bad things, like all the bad things happen, God's so good and so loving.
Well, I'm gonna discuss that today. So, do what now? I would ask them. Start asking them questions. Okay, well, then how did we get here? Let them take you. Try to unwrap what they're thinking, because sometimes it's just a matter. I don't want to believe in God, like if they're really honest with themselves. But then you have others who truly do believe that science is all there is, and you got to take them to that point and be like, okay, it only goes so far, And so you got to kind of unwrap that. Well, why? It's interesting how many people who don't believe in God are really angry at God, and that's why they. How can you be angry at something you don't believe in? So they're angry at that concept. All right, who can give me one of the questions you think unbelievers struggle to understand? Somebody, anybody? Is God real? Okay. How would you all explain that or answer that? If someone's like, is God real? How do I know God's real? Yeah, Johnny?
I give some circumstances in my life where He shows me.
Okay, so you've given some experiential circumstances, absolutely. Okay. What else? What's another question? What's another question you think unbelievers have a hard time understanding? How could He love? I've heard that before. You don't know how bad I've been. How can He love me? Okay. So how would you all answer that? God can't love me. I'm terrible. How would you answer that? What? You can have forgiveness. How else would you answer it? Share your own personal story. Amen. Katie says she's just as bad. Remind them about Christ. Jason, what'd you say?
Examples from the Bible and from many people used from their backgrounds and all of them.
Absolutely. Use examples from the Bible of all the people that God used who had past, who had sordid past. I would just point out that He loves Sammy Burt, and that should do it. I'll pay for that later. All right. What's another question? Why does God allow bad things to happen? Okay. Why is there evil in the world? Anybody want to tackle that? I'm going to preach on it today, but free will. Okay. Okay, so we'll realize we're not in control and turn to Him. What'd you say, Katie? Did you forget already?
Come on, give me just 1 second. Because there's sin in the world and it's a broken world, so there's going to be bad things.
Because there's sin in the world, it's a broken world, there's going to be bad things. What else? How would you answer it, Jody? Sin? Okay. Well, hello there. Ask Mac, he put them together. Communion trays. Hey, that's problem solved. Okay. All right. What's another question we have? And before we go to this last part. Good one. Well, I'm a good person. I'm not as bad as so-and-so. Or I'm just as good as those people that go to church at such and such. Okay? Okay. And to me, I'm not going to answer that. Well, how would y'all answer that? Being good's not good enough. Okay? Okay. How else would you answer it? I'd get right down to the heart of the matter. That's right. But I'd get down and ask them, what do you mean you're good? What does that mean? You know, have you lied? Have you stolen? Have you cheated somebody? Have you, thought impure thoughts? Have you, point out to them, they're not as good as they think they are. Okay? It's a comparative thing. It's a subjective. I'm good compared to such and such. But to God, no, you're not. Okay? That's right. And you can compare yourself to man all day and feel real good about yourself. Okay? You compare yourself to God, you're going to feel real bad about yourself. But that's His kindness is what leads us to repentance. Morning, Wes. All right. So with all these questions, we know there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. But here's the one thing you can share. And I think part of our reason that we're afraid of rejection is because we're afraid we just don't know the answer. We just don't know enough to share with them, answer their questions effectively. But Johnny said it best when he says, how do I know that God is real? Well, let me show you how He was real in my life. Okay, because that's the only thing you own in this is your own testimony. That's the only thing you own. And so if you look on page 130, preparing your testimony. I was a senior in high school, I was at a camp in the summer, and at FCA camp, and one of the leaders of FCA had asked me to prepare my testimony to share with the entire camp. And I was super pumped because, again, I love being in front of people. I was like, sweet, this is my first chance to talk with these people. So I spent all night getting my testimony together, writing it out, getting it prepped where I was like, I've got what I'm going to say. And then that day came around, and they got too busy, and he's like, we don't have time for you to share your testimony. And I was mad. I was like, why did I prepare this? Why did I spend all night getting this ready? And they're like, okay, today we're going to go out and share door to door with people. All right, and so they put us in groups of 3 to 4, and they dropped us in these neighborhoods in Lexington, and they were like, all right, go do these surveys door to door and talk to people about the Lord. Okay. And so here we go, and I'm the leader of this group, and I'm like 18 years old at this time, and 17 years old. And I'm the leader of these teenagers. And so we're walking, and one of the rules was you never go in someone's house, ever, okay? And so we're walking through, and we're doing this survey, asking people if they're more interested in religion now or than later. We're talking about death, we're talking about afterlife, etc. Well, we get to this guy. He answers the door. He's got hair down to about right here, big guy. And we said, we wanted to give a survey with you about religion. And he said, I'm not sure I'm the guy you want to talk to. And we were like, how come? He said, because I'm a Wicca. I said, you're a what? And he said, I'm Wiccan. And I was like, what's that? And I'd never heard that term before. I've heard of a Wookiee, but I don't think that's what he meant. And I said, what's a Wicca? And he said, well, we believe in witchcraft. And I was like, oh. And so I'm just like flipping through the back of my Bible looking for witchcraft. I can find some verses, throw at this guy. And so now I'm like totally like intrigued by this dude. And he was real nice and talked to us. And I just felt like I need to talk to this guy. And so I told my kids, I was like, okay, y'all go on to the next house and do the survey. And I knocked back on his door, and I was like, I'd like to know a little more about this Wicca stuff. I want to talk to you. And he said, come on in. And I was like, okay. Went into his house, sat down. I'm looking, and there's like a picture on the mantle of this guy with like a 4-leaf clover, and he's like in a cleric robe, and he's got this big broad sword. And I'm thinking, that's it. I'm dying. Like, this is it. This is where it ends for me. And so he brings out all these books, and it was like Wicca for Dummies, and this, seriously, they had like whatever their scripture was and all this. And we sit there and talk. And as we're talking, all of a sudden I was like, let me share with you what God's done in my life. And it hit me just then that the reason I was asked to prepare my testimony the night before was not to share with the group. It was to share with this guy. And if I had not prepared that testimony, I would not have been ready to share with him. Now, I would love to be like, oh, yeah, he fell on his knees and accepted Christ as Lord, but that's not what happened. But I learned a lot. Exactly. And I learned that we have to be ready. And so what I want you to do right now on this page 130, It's going to ask you to write a significant event that falls under each part of this outline. Anytime you share your testimony with somebody, that's your experiences with the Lord. And there can be multiple testimonies within your life, different circumstances. But generally, what you want to share with somebody is, who were you before the Lord? How did you receive the Lord? What happened when you became a believer? And how are you different now? Because we know Scripture says that we are a changed person once we know Jesus. So, if you could, I don't even want you to write this in. I want you to turn and tell somebody these things, okay? And we've got about 15 minutes, okay? And I'm going to give you about 10 just to do this. Just turn to somebody else. I want you to tell them one thing about your life before Christ, how you accepted Christ, okay? And now your life with Christ. What's different, all right? So go ahead and talk to somebody around you, preferably not a spouse or a parent, okay? Somebody else who might not know this story about you. Right, it was Joe. I guess you Katie's behind you, okay? But share with the person beside you, around you, what your life was like before Christ, how you accepted Christ, and now your life with Christ, okay? So, Jason, you share with Darren, Katie, with Deetra, okay? All right. You have to come around, okay? This is Jessica's brother. If your partner hasn't had a chance to respond yet, give them a chance to tell a little bit about theirs before we come back. Convention? It's in November. Yeah. All right. So let me ask you this. How many of y'all found out something about that person that you did not know? You know, it blesses my heart to just to walk around and listen to you all sharing something so personal about your lives with each other, because as we learn where each other comes from, then we can better grow with one another. Because each of us brings a different story, a different gift to the table, and we won't know those things unless we ask about those things. You know, from people talking about growing up not knowing the Lord to a group back there talking about how they'd all grown up in church and how that was different, and they didn't know a time where they weren't in church, and so every one of us has a different story. But this is the good thing about it: when we're sharing with somebody who's a non-believer, who's a spiritual infant, we have ammo in our gun. We have a testimony that's just ours, just to share with them. And I promise you that if you ask and you pray for God to put people in your life, put people in your path to discuss something with, He's going to put somebody in your path that your testimony is going to touch, that it's going to minister to them. And so as we talk today in this message, a little bit later, even the bad things in your life are meant to be part of your testimony. And so we need to recognize that. So quick review, okay? Building a relationship with someone, that's what opens up the door to share the gospel with them, okay? To share the gospel with someone who's spiritually dead. And the two primary ways a disciple maker shares with the spiritually dead are by answering their questions, okay? And is it okay to say, I don't know? Absolutely. It's much better to say, I don't know, than to make something up, okay? Much better, all right? And then not just try to answer their questions, but share your own personal testimony with him or her, okay, whatever the situation may be. Because bottom line is they cannot become a disciple until they first what? Believe, okay? And that's on our shoulders to share that gospel with them, okay? So be encouraged by the testimonies you heard today and by sharing, because it's really that easy to share that with somebody else. Because if you truly believe that God has done this in your life, it's real easy to talk about it. Because I'm not trying to tell Johnny, all right, Johnny, you need to be saved, you need to know the Lord. But hey, listen, let me tell you what God did in my life. And just let him chew on it. Like, let him chew on that. Because I'm so sold out and believe that God did this in my life, and I want you to know about it. Okay? And then let them do with that what they want. But you at least get to share what God has done. You've declared his marvelous works. And so that's what we want to do. That's what we're called to do. Amen? All right. Hey, Mac, go ahead, Mike. Right. Bless her heart, yeah. What? She's praying.
And you in Jesus' name and praying and just having a big conversation with him. So even if your mind's gone, he's still there.
Even though in her age she's lost, memory of the people around her, she still knows the Lord. That's awesome testimony. Amen. Yeah, Katie. Anybody else? All right. Matt, will you close us out with a word of prayer?